You're listening to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. Here's your hosts, Jeremy and Pat.
Hello and welcome to the Wrigleyville Nation podcast. This is episode 392 of the podcast. My name is Jeremy Deemer. I will be your host, and I'm joined as always by my co-host. He's my cousin, and he's high atop Wrigleyville tonight. How's it going, Pat?
Well, it's a good, nice, beautiful evening in Chicago in late September. Can't complain.
It is. I was mentioning that I've got a slight Riot Fest hangover as we roll into this podcast, but the Cubs also have a hangover celebrating their playoff clinching game in Pittsburgh. We will recap the series in Pittsburgh. We will talk about the disaster in Cincinnati. And to help us preview all things Cubs, recap all the news, all the happenings, you know him from his work at Cubs Insider, longtime friend of the show, Evan Altman. Thanks for taking time out to talk Cubs with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me on after a 4-game sweep in which they got shut out 1-0 twice. There's no better time, no better preparation for the playoff push than being swept.
You know, I could remind you about all the other appearances for the last few years where it was a lot of
First
a lot of
4-game losing
stretches
streak of the year.
Yeah.
But for this year, this is the first 4-game losing streak of the year. We'll get to it. It was a 3-4 week overall, which, boy, that could have been a lot worse. Thank goodness Pittsburgh is awful. That really helped. But yeah, losing 4 in a row. We'll start with Pittsburgh, where they won 3 in a row, and they clinched their playoff spots. We had Tyone pitching well. I'm going to start there, Evan. This has been a pleasant surprise, the Jameson Tyone experience.
Yeah, it was. It's been a little up and down, obviously, with kind of his early performance, and then you had the whole calf strain kind of out of nowhere, which is those haven't worked out real well thus far for the Cubs. And that was like right before the 4th of July, right? I think was when that happened, and he was out for a while with that. Comes back, then there's kind of the groin thing or whatever, but since then he's been excellent. I think all of his starts really since that longer IL stint. And I mean, who would have thought, right? This would be sacrilegious back in July to say Tyone's your 2 or at least 3 postseason starter at this point, like over Matt Boyd and possibly over Shota Imanaga, the way they've been pitching. Like it's gotten to do. The one thing that continues to worry me about Tyon, though, is, man, his strikeout rate has just plummeted over the last few years. Like, that worries me a lot when he's got to pitch to contact, but he's avoiding it well. I mean, he's looked really sharp and efficient out there. He doesn't walk batters. The changeup, he went to that kick change. That's worked out really well. So out of all the guys in the rotation right now who aren't named Cade Horton, if you ask me, twist my arm, he's probably the one I trust the most out of the other 4 at this point, or 5 or 6 or however many we want to go with. But
he definitely had a good week, and he might be the only other pitcher peaking at this point. Everybody else is in long form regression mode. Although Soroka's back, he pitched in the game and pitched 2 scoreless innings, so maybe he's our number 3 starter.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yeah, Tyone, 6 innings in Pittsburgh, giving up no earned runs, 3 strikeouts, a couple walks. And then in Cincinnati, Tyone goes 7 innings, which we've been begging for some starters to be able to go 7 innings. Tyone does it. 4 strikeouts, only 1 earned run for him. So, yeah, great week for potential playoff pitcher Jameson Tyone for the Cubs. Game 2, we did get to see a guy who is going to be incredibly important for the playoff push, and that's Cade Horton, as he outdueled Paul Skeens. Again. Making a campaign for Rookie of the Year, taking out last year's Rookie of the Year, Evan.
Yeah, and that, to me, I mean, there's a lot of things we've seen from Horton, right? And he has kind of hit all these benchmarks that you want to see, and I kind of said the same thing about him and wrote about it a little. I think it was around that same July 4th-ish period when it was like, boy, he looks really good. He just needs to strike more batters out. And we've seen that. It's not, nearly like a Skeens level elite strikeout stuff, but Horton is not afraid to pound the zone with all of his different pitches. He's done kind of, again, if we do kind of do the Skeens comp, he's added pitches from what we saw from him early on in his career. And the funny thing about it, if let's say, I think even if he doesn't, he should win Rookie of the Year, right? But I think there's a very, very good shot that he finishes at least top 2, in which case he will be granted, just like Skeens was last year for winning, he'll be granted a full year of service time despite the Cubs holding him off. And if that happens, the Cubs also will not qualify for prospect promotion incentives because they called him up too late, just like what happened with the Pirates and Skeens. So it's going to be, obviously, at the end of the day, you'd rather have an ace pitcher, homegrown. The team would say that, any fans would say that, but I do think it'll be pretty funny if the best pitcher on your roster ends up still getting a full year of service time. You miss out on some of the extra cheap control, and you miss out on those incentives when, again, probably a guy in Skeens' case, it was a lot different because he had no business being in the minor leagues last year. And so you feel good about the cheap Pirates doing that. And I get the situation, but it would be kind of ironic if the Cubs were to have kind of made those same mistakes. But at the end of the day, again, here's a guy who came up and has done everything that anybody could have expected and then some, right? He's been better, I think, than any of us would have imagined. So the fact that he's even in the conversation and is the odds-on favorite to win Rookie of the Year is pretty impressive in the fact that it just looks like he keeps getting better, right? Like each time out, another little wrinkle, something different that he's doing. And it feels like the comps have been out there, but it's the same feel as Arrieta in 15, where you just know they're going to win when this guy's on the bump, as long as they score 1 run or maybe 2, right? So they haven't had that in a while.
My instinct is to as default to think, well, the Cubs are being cheap. In this case, though, I almost cut him a little bit of a break because of the injury history Horton had last year and how he didn't really pitch much. They wanted to get him some innings in the minors. When Steele went down, they still were toying around. They had this whole Colin Ray problem where they're paying him $5 million. They want to see if he could start. And it wasn't really till Lemonaga went down when you're like, okay, well, crisis mode here. But I feel like once Horton came up, and yeah, it would have been nice to bring him up a little bit earlier, I suppose. But once he did come up, I've been pleased with the fact that they've kept him in. And actually, they did something interesting this week where they went to a 6th-man rotation. They had a sod pitching game. So now Horton, who pitched on Tuesday of last week in that win, is scheduled to pitch because of the off day Monday, probably tomorrow, I would assume, which means that he would be in line to be the game 1 starter the following Tuesday. And I like giving him a week off between starts these last 2 weeks because they have really, he's thrown so many more innings than he has before. But yeah, it would be nice if the Cubs could have gotten some incentives for having somebody, homegrown pitcher do that because, they don't have a lot of homegrown pitchers. He is if he is our most recent homegrown pitcher, I'm trying to think who would be our third to last homegrown pitcher of note. Because the second to last is Steele.
Yeah.
I think the third to last might be Zambrano.
Rob Zastryzny.
Yeah.
The first Theo Epstein drafted pitcher to actually debut for the Cubs. But yeah, I'm not joking. I think Zambrano might be the third to last homegrown pitcher, and he came up in 2003 or 2002. So, these are things that happen once every 8 years or so for the Cubs. Yeah, of any note anyway, to have somebody who comes up and I think that's what's been, hopefully we continue to see that. And that's kind of one of the things, it's one of those unsung little deals about what they've done with the pitching infrastructure. Although, I don't think that, I think that falls more on Dan Kantrovitz and some of the guys, for draft, because Horton, here's what we got to remember, right? This is a guy who only threw like 53 innings total in college. He had 1 college season because of Tommy John at that point. And then he was redshirted, so he was draft eligible after that season. And if you look at the actual statistics, and he had an ERA close to 5, like nobody saw that coming at the number 7 pick. But he caught fire there at the end, had his best games ever in the College World Series. And I think that's one of the things the Cubs, in my opinion, at least right now, correctly identified as someone who can step up, because we're seeing it now as these games have gotten more important through the second half. And I would say that's, again, the reason why you'd want him out there. We could argue all day that he doesn't have postseason experience, but I think Matt Boyd's one of the few that actually does. And again, I wouldn't trust him at this point, but I would say pitching in the College World Series at the time when he had so little overall experience and showing out, to me, signals very good things for his possibility of taking the bump and actually getting them a win. I don't think this guy's fazed by any form of pressure whatsoever. And you can just see it. Like, his demeanor doesn't change. He's just saying, again, it reminds me of Arrieta or even Kyle Hendricks, right? Just who's apparently going to be retiring here, if we can believe Bob Gill.
It's a reminder, though, that obviously we know pitchers don't always work out, especially young pitchers. You have high hopes for lots of young pitchers, and most of them don't even make the majors. And if they do, they tend to pitch in relief. And we've seen with Jordan Wicks, and we've another first round pick. We've seen with Hayden Wisniewski, who we had a lot of hope for, and others. So there are no givens. So the fact that Horton, who really got a lot of buzz, I think, starting probably in about 2023, as like this guy could be something. And then last year, of course, had the injury, which set him back, which was kind of like, I think for a lot of fans were thinking, oh, there you go again. But the way he came back this year and has pitched, that's what you want to do. And when we look at the organization, there aren't a whole lot of guys behind him. So it's really important that he be good. Jackson Wiggins might be the next guy who had a lot of buzz in 2024 and then was injured this year and lost a year development. Maybe can come back and be something next year. But it's a pretty thin list, and so let's hope Cade Horton finishes strong and is part of this rotation for the next 6 or 7 years.
A guy who's not finishing strong is Matthew Boyd, who we talked about here. 3 innings pitched, gave up 4 earned runs to these same Pittsburgh Pirates.
Cinderella better get home quick, because the ball's about to end. It feels like
it's very concerning. I mean, he was 2 weeks ago. We're talking he's your game 1 starter probably.
Oh yeah, he was a game 1 starter basically all year.
Yeah.
I sent you a text, Jeremy, today. Did you see that about Cubs pitchers ERA in the second half?
Yeah, Horton's the only one under 4.
Yeah, he's at 0.93. Showed us at 4.06. But what I thought was really crazy, and I didn't realize it was this bad, Boyd is up to 4.74 in the second
worst
half.
Of the rotation.
Not in the last week, not in the last 2 weeks, but over the entire second half, his ERA is 4.74. Ouch.
Yeah, and that's what happens, though, and this is where I'm going to place a ton of the blame on the way that that's been managed. And we can, not necessarily Craig Counsell, but the organization as a whole. If you guys recall, back at the beginning of the season, Tommy Hotovy was talking about it and saying that, the plan was they'd hoped to maybe get 120 innings out of Boyd, which is completely understandable for a guy
which they did in May.
Right. And that's he hadn't thrown as many as 80 innings since 2019.
Yeah.
Right. When he's with the Tigers. And so it's, to me, there's the Horton thing is one thing, because at least he's young, and I think they've been able, and he's been very efficient in his games too. They've still been limiting him. He's just been able to go deeper.
Yeah,
and he's been
I was at a game where they took him out of a no-hitter after 5 innings. Yeah. Trust me, they're limiting him.
Yeah, but Boyd just, it's not as if it's somebody, I think tried to respond on Twitter like, oh, you got hosed on the call, or there's a play here. I was like, but the dude just, what we saw from him earlier is like an entirely different pitcher from what we're seeing now. And
he's at 174 innings right now. That's a lot of innings.
That's close to a career
in modern baseball. In modern baseball, that's a lot of innings. And you really do start to worry here. And I put some of the blame on the fact that the Cubs, as often happens, didn't go out and get the second pitcher we were all expecting them to get this offseason. Remember, get two pitchers in free agency, because every year that the Cubs lose free agents and have all this extra money to spend, right? Do you reinvest it in the team? We had this conversation the first podcast in March, I think, or do you not?
Yep.
And what we were told when they didn't reinvest in the team, when they traded Bellinger for nothing and said, "Oh, we're saving money," but guess what? We'll have it at the trade deadline. Well, the trade deadline, they're like, well, nobody wanted to give us players that were expensive, so we got zilch. And I think Boyd, because of the injury to Steele and then the injury to Imanaga, they really had to ride him because they had no choice, really, because Council didn't have enough starting pitchers. Assad was out for most of the year, and Horton wasn't there yet. I mean, he was just kind of stuck with a bunch of sub major league level talent there. So he did what he could, but part of doing what he could meant having to ride Boyd, and now we're paying the price, like you said, Evan.
Yeah, it's a little bit concerning. Well, and then the one main pickup that they got who had been a starter, as you noted, Pat, was Michael Soroka, who then came in, throws two innings.
He's given us 4 innings in the second half, hasn't he?
But at least the velocity is up. But that's and truth be told, he is, I think, much better served as like that mid relief, long relief, 2-3 innings at a time guy where he can let that fastball play up 95, 96. But it's just, we talk about this. You say, hey, just get in. All you need to do is get in and get hot at the right point. And that's what we've seen with a lot of these teams that have kind of made this kind of jet propulsion there toward the last month of the season. But the Cubs are they're just stumbling backwards, right? And just hoping they can turn around and face forward before this thing happens. Because right now, there's nothing you can look at and say, here we are, we're worried about the pitching staff, the starting rotation. And then we're sitting here talking about a team that just got shut out twice in 4 games in Cincinnati. Like, what aspect of this team right now do you look at and say, I feel great about them heading into these big, most important games of the season?
No, when the shining bright spot of the series against Cincinnati is Colin Ray, of all people. In game 1, he pitched 7 innings, no earned runs, 11 strikeouts for Colin Ray. Holy cow. But somehow out-dueled by Green, who only had a 1-hitter, and the Cubs offense just couldn't show up to support Colin Ray.
Well, that's what happens when you're out. They had their champagne celebration in Pittsburgh, and then got into Cincinnati in their lederhosen and their Oktoberfest gear, and then the young guys, I think, went out and partied up a little bit more. And so I was not at all surprised by the fact that they lost. I don't think anybody was, but it was more like, all right, hey, your Riot Fest hangover should be gone by Wednesday or Thursday, I would hope. However,
absolutely, better be.
The Cubs remained hungover the entire week. It was just like, and I've said this multiple times, and every time I say it, I feel like I have to qualify it because it is the kind of thing that you hear from fans of a certain type or whatever, and I try to avoid such things, but it really just looked like the Reds wanted it more, that they cared more. The Cubs just looked kind of lackadaisical. I mean, just sleepwalking. It looked like one team had, and this was the case, is why it looked like this, but one team had secured their spot and felt like they were fine, and one team was fighting for their spot, and the Reds did exactly that. The Reds are in the playoffs right now. They control their destiny because they've got the tiebreaker over the Mets, and the Cubs still have their 3-game cushion, but it very much felt like something where the Cubs had just said, nah, we're cool. We're just going to take our feet off the gas. We'll just ride this down the hill for a while, get back to Wrigley. It's fine.
So much of the month of September, end of August, has just been treading water, just hanging on and just getting ready. We're going to hold this spot down, play 500, and just get to the playoffs and keep that home field for the best of 3. The one thing that scares me going into the playoffs is it's not just this series in Cincinnati, but Imanaga's been struggling mightily with the home run ball. That's been the story for him. Game 2 was just another showcase of it, but it's not new. That's not just this series. It's not just a hot day in Cincinnati. He's been struggling with the home run ball, and really makes me nervous when you're counting on him to be so important in one of these best of threes.
When that's why you really, like, as much as we kind of lament the fact that Wrigley has turned into this pitcher's ballpark over the last 2-3 years, like that's kind of what they're going to have. If Imanaga's going to continue pitching like this, they're going to need that wind blowing in and knocking it down, right? And I know, like, if it's the Padres, which I think the chances are incredibly high that that's what it'll be, you need Wrigley to play pretty big. The Padres aren't a home run hitting team, but if you look at where the Cubs offense has been and you look at how quickly, and we saw that in Cincinnati, how quickly the game can get out of hand when you start giving up home runs, like they might not hit a bunch as a team, but San Diego's clearly got some dudes who can put the ball out of the park. And if you get him up in the air and Imanaga's not quite sharp, that just it puts you in that deficit. And again, we're talking about, hey, it's one thing you can look at it and say, well, we didn't lose much ground, no big deal. But you definitely can't lose two, obviously. But going in there and losing even one game in a 3-game series, especially if it's early on, that puts you behind so quick. That concerns me a great deal. He's like, I need to fix it. Like, well, yes.
Clock's ticking.
Yeah, not many opportunities left to do that, bud. So hopefully he figures something out. But yeah, it's a bit concerning.
Yeah, the starting staff picked a really bad time to have a bad time. I guess.
No, they did.
I mean, I don't know how else to say it. Like, it's like, guys, Imanaga was rock solid for, a year and a couple months, and then not. And Boyd, of course, had that great start, all-star. And now here he is. So it's really Cade Horton and Colin Ray had a great game this week. I mean, talk about surprising things, but that's not somebody you want in the playoffs starting game for you. It's it's gonna be tricky. And the other thing that I think that Red Series showed is that, I mean, look, there are several of those games where the Cubs pitched pretty well. They lost 2 games 1-0, for God's sake. You can't blame the bullpen pitched well. In the one game, Ray pitched well. The other one, Tyon pitched well. But when your offense is as moribund as the Cubs offense has been, game to game, it puts a lot of extra pressure on your pitching. And with Tucker out of the lineup, I mean, and with PCA basically non-existent offensively, like, do you have concerns about the offensive makeup right now, like where we're at today?
Cubs were shut out twice in this series.
In Cincinnati, which is a hitter's ballpark, right? I mean, typically.
It's supposed to be, although the Reds have, by ERA plus, the Reds have the best pitching staff in baseball. Yeah,
they have a great staff. We talked about that last week on the podcast. I said the Cubs are going to play 7 games against the Pirates in Cincinnati, and for the first time, even when the Cubs sucked, this might be the first time in 25 years where I can say that the Cubs don't have the better pitcher starting in any of the 7 games, like a clearly better pitcher. Like the one game we had Horton, they had Skeens, that kind of thing. But in the rest of these games, the Cubs went up. I mean, Hunter Green's a better pitcher than anybody the Cubs have. And Lodolo and all these guys are Abbott. They're good pitchers. They're really good pitchers. And that's not good news for the future. I mean, we talk about having Cade Horton as maybe the one guy, kind of, the cost control guy we got going. Reds have like 4 of those guys, and they got more coming.
Well, look at the Pirates with Skeens. They have Braxton Ashcraft, who's been really good, who actually was the starter. So Cade Horton's first start this year for the Iowa Cubs was in Indianapolis against Ashcraft, who was with the Indianapolis Indians at the time. But if Pittsburgh ever figures out how to build an offense, or again, if the Reds, and that's the crazy thing, like the Reds for all that time was just like, hey, go get Adam Dunn and these other big lefty mashers and just out homer everybody. Like, that's how you're going to win. Now it's like, boy, if they figure out how to do that, but that's where I'm a little concerned. Again, among other things, is you're going to face good pitchers in the playoffs. That's how that works. You have to beat good pitchers, unless they're going to make a bunch of mistakes and pitch like Clayton Kershaw in the postseason. Then I don't know. Again, San Diego's not the greatest staff in the world, but that's a short set like that. You cannot
They got a
go
good
out there and
bullpen.
lay an egg. Yeah,
A good bullpen.
sure do.
Yeah. So on the one hand, I'm buoyed by the notion that, like, you saw Michael Busch had a bunch of home runs this week and got his 30th and seems to be kind of picking it up again after a little bit of a lull, and that's great.
Leading the team with 30.
Who would have thought that a couple months ago? On the other hand, PCA since the All-Star break, I hate to dump on PCA because, I mean, he's overall his season will look better than the way we feel about it today, probably because of how good he was at the start of the season. But his numbers since the All-Star break, 209 batting average, 4 home runs and 19 RBIs. I mean, he was a lock to hit 30 homers and steal 30 bases, right? A lock, the All-Star break. And here's even worse. Since August 1st, which is now, 7 or 8 weeks, 175 average, 230 on base percentage, 260 slugging percentage. He is the worst hitter in all of Major League Baseball with 100 or more plate appearances.
Brutal.
In all of baseball. That includes catchers. So, like, if you feel frustrated or you feel worried about PCA, I think you have a right to be at this point. 7 weeks is not just a slump. That's an extended period of time.
And that's the thing, right? Again, so Busch, and I think this is wild, right? The first Cubs hitter with 30 home runs since 2019.
Yeah, since Rizzo, right?
Yeah, and only like the 5th Cubs first baseman. I'm sorry, but how do you go 5 seasons without one 30 home run hitter
in this era? Right,
not one. Right, we're seeing these guys.
It's called retooling, not rebuilding.
Yeah, the Frank Schwindel era didn't bring us 30 home runs. That's for sure.
Patrick Wisdom almost did, but not quite, right?
Well, they had, I mean, Seiya and PCA were at 25, 26 when at the break. Like, how is this not? They were close to 30 in the first half. What is happening? That's what's scary. Again, we talked about Imanaga giving up home runs, and the Cubs early on were hitting a bunch, obviously, but now, like, you fall behind that early, they don't slug well enough to come back, at least consistently. We've seen it a couple of times, but it's not happening anymore.
Well, you mentioned, Evan, that when you're in the playoffs, you face good pitching. And so the formula, I think, and there's debate about this back and forth, but one of the formulas that I think has been pretty successful for a lot of teams is they have good pitching and they have some sluggers, right? Because a hit or a walk and a home run, and you got 2 runs. It's a lot harder to put together 5 straight hits off a good pitcher than it is to draw a bases loaded or a full count walk on a close pitch, and then next guy hits a home run, right? Like, that's a Phillies thing. That's a Dodgers thing. And the Cubs, I mean, you would think the Cubs early on, or like a couple months ago, I'd have been like, yeah, I think our team is built for that. I think we can do that because we've got a bunch of guys who at the time I thought were all going to have like 35 homers, right? Like you said, PCA, Tucker, Busch was going to have a lot of home runs, and Seiya was going to have a lot of home runs. I'm like, yeah, we talked about this early in the year. It's like, isn't it nice to have some power in the lineup for a change? Because it's been many years since we felt like we had like real guys who, when they came up, you're like, there's a good chance this guy's going to home run. Swanson's close to a career high in homers. I mean, just hitting a lot of home runs. And now all of a sudden it's like, well, Tucker's been out, may or may not be back for the playoffs. PCA has a 260 slugging percentage since August 1st. That's impossible, almost. I mean, some of those were probably doubles that were really long singles that he stretched out. Like he said almost no power whatsoever. And so now all of a sudden that power that we had been counting on, Seiya Suzuki is going to hit maybe under 240 at the end of the year. This power we were counting on is just completely evaporated. And is it possible that they all get it back come playoff time? I certainly hope so. But I like to start seeing it like Tuesday if I could, because they're just. I don't want this to be one of those seasons where they peaked, early, like in June and July, and then it was just all downhill from there. And we've had those seasons in the past. Last year was so up and down, but the year before that, I felt like was that year, right? Where in September we just collapsed. Alzolay got hurt, and we just kept, everything fell apart. I don't want one of those. I don't want, to have a great, what would otherwise be a great season, feel like a disappointment because we got swept in a 2-game playoff, against the Padres or somebody, where we got like a total of like 6 hits, and that's my fear.
What a difference a healthy, good Kyle Tucker makes in this lineup, and his bat is terribly missed. And I was looking at this lineup, at some of these lineups, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what this team is probably going to look like next year.
I mean, Sunday's lineup
real similar.
Was really interesting, right? Because you didn't have Seiya, you didn't have PCA, you didn't have Tucker, you didn't have Shaw, which we can get to. You had a lot of the young guys playing, and you had Justin Turner and Santana both playing. I mean, young and
way
old,
too much Santana over this week, man.
He did at least collect his first Cubs hit.
He did.
So there is that. But here's and again, I look at some of these things and I understand. For all that we've heard about Craig Counsell, if you guys recall, when he's back with the Brewers, right? He had initially come back to the organization as just kind of a special assistant in the front office, right before, and now it's escaping me when they fired their manager midseason and brought Counsell in to do the job. And so there's all this talk about how, even though he's an old school type player, he was very analytically inclined and learned a lot from the front office, but I don't know that I've seen as much of that, and it definitely feels like we're still just in this very standard righty-lefty split type of thing. I mean, Bush was in there the other day, but partly because Justin Turner had to step in and play third base, which, again, is less than ideal. But you had a lefty on the mound, so they went with 8 right-handed bats, even though Andrew Abbott is by far his splits at home decidedly favored left-handed batters. We saw that with some guys kind of, and I mean, Bush got to him. So I just thought that was a little bit odd. We've seen that with these lineups, but it's like, all right, we're going to roll out the 39-year-old who can still pick it, who has not gotten a hit with the Cubs, who hasn't hit well all season, but can play first base really well. So, hey, let's put him in there as the DH and negate the one thing he does really well while putting, Justin Turner over at third where he can't field that position anymore and hasn't been able to for years now. When you've got a Willie Castro, like I get there's the extenuating circumstances of playing shorthanded, but there are times when I look at this and think I don't feel like this lineup is actually in one game doesn't really matter, but there's been a lot of those where I scratch my head and just think this seems to run contrary to all available data that we have in front of us, but.
And it feels more exacerbated by the fact that they're not hitting, and so every one of these decisions gets magnified. I mean, the fact that they got swept in this 4-game series, when in reality, all they really needed to do was win one of the 4 games, and they would have been set up this week. It had a 4-game lead over the Padres with 6 to go. Yes, we don't have the tiebreaker, but that's pretty comfortable. Now you have to sweat it out a little bit. You actually have to try to win these games. And I really didn't want to be in that position. I was really hoping that by Wednesday we could just be like, okay, after Wednesday, we can just, the rest of the week, we can rest some people and do what we need to. But they just weren't able to do it this week. And you're right. We were shorthanded on Sunday. We've been shorthanded, pitching wise on Saturday by going to the bullpen game. I understand why they did it, but didn't work out. And so here we are. Jeremy, your thoughts about the Shaw situation on Sunday?
Well, first, to Evan's point of having to see Justin Turner play third base, Matt Shaw needs to be in bubble wrap at all times. We can't who knew we can't lose him because I saw what the lineup looks like with him out there. He of course was out at the Charlie Kirk Memorial in Arizona, took the day off for that, and it turns out Matt Shaw's second half we need him in that lineup desperately and to play good third base. The corpse of Justin Turner and Carlos and Santana is not some somebody that we can have going in the playoffs. I mean, Castro maybe, but man, Matt Shaw has become an important part of the lineup going forward.
Yeah, you don't. I mean, I remember once. Players take off people take off because of a family, a parent died or something, or like birth of a child or whatever. I remember Larry Walker once. He was like a 10-year vet at the time with Colorado, and he got a little bit of grief for it, but not a whole lot. He I guess his best friend, maybe his best friend from childhood, if I recall, had died suddenly in a motorcycle crash, and he took off a day or two to go deal with that. And I just remember that as being like one of the few instances like this where somebody left for a non-family member, somebody they don't really aren't as connected to. Having it be a pennant race made it harder too for the team, but yeah, I and as a rookie too, I just thought that was a curious decision. Obviously the team allowed it, but yeah, was it I guess we had Molina, didn't he take off to go watch a Puerto Rican Little League game or something once?
It was his basketball team. He owns a basketball team.
Right.
Yeah,
that's right.
So he just took off and did that. So
he'd been around for 20 years, so maybe he'd gotten some. I mean, what were they going to do to him? It was his last year. He was gonna, he could just quit that day if he'd wanted to. But yeah, I don't know how that plays in these days in major clubhouses. I don't know if anybody cares about that stuff. I have a feeling like that's the kind of thing that would not have played well 20 years ago or 25 years ago. Can you imagine in a pennant race, like just saying, "Sorry guys, I'm going to go to a memorial service for a celebrity in Arizona today, and I'm not going to play." But that's where we're at. Maybe not to say it would have made the difference in the game. Might have. Who knows? It was 1-0. We'll never know. But hopefully,
he hit a home run in game 2.
He did, and he had 2 doubles in Saturday and Friday. He was like one of the few guys who was actually hitting the ball well at the time. But so. Hopefully it doesn't cost us in the long run.
Well, and I think the part that I have is just this team, again, just playing shorthanded, effectively, willingly. When we think about I'm still upset about
the Tucker thing.
The Tucker thing.
Yes, of course.
About going,
yes.
It's absurd.
He missed the last game of the Braves series in Chicago and then was out for a couple more games. And then Council's like, well, all right, he'll be in the lineup this week. He won't be in the lineup, but he'll be available this weekend. Right? Well, that came and went. So now he had missed the third, because the Cubs had a scheduled day off on that Thursday. So he sat out the Wednesday game, was off Thursday. Okay, cool. Well, he'll be ready to go for the weekend. He'll be available. Nope, he's not available. So then the Cubs go down to Atlanta and he's not in the game on Monday. And then it's like, on Tuesday he gets put on the IL. But by then, you can't backdate it to the start of when he was sitting out. Right. So, they played shorthanded for almost a week and then never even gotten – and not like you can go back in time and get those games back, and not that it would really matter now because he was eligible to have come off last Tuesday and still didn't. Now he's gone. Now he's just seeing his own personal physical therapist, which I don't want to cast any aspersions on this gentleman. I'm sure he's a wonderful physical therapist. But – to just basically say, although I guess calling the Cubs medical staff their credentials into question is not new.
Fair.
It's probably not really that bad a thing, but it is. It just there's a lot about this that gives me the ick in a variety of ways. But setting that all aside, I think we're at 17 games now that he has missed.
Yeah.
And the Cubs aren't playing well. The offense doesn't have that spot there in the middle of the order, or I guess high up in the order. Guys are having to kind of hit a little bit out of position as a result. You're having to rely. It's one thing to rely, in case he comes in for a game and gets concussed, and now you got Kevin Alcantara, and what are we doing here? But it's replacing him with rookies and or Willie Castro, who has been well below replacement level as a Cub. That's just a gaping hole in the lineup when we talk about the things they have to be able to do. And now you look at it and say, we don't even know if he'll be back. Probably not for the regular season. Then he starts a post game after a month off.
Yeah. Do you worry? Like, it's say with Amaya, at this point, I assume Amaya will not play again this year, right? How could he? He's played one game in the last 3 months, one Major League Baseball game in 3 months. Like I don't know if you can just show up for the first playoff game and be game ready. I mean, Tucker's less.
Kyle Schwarber, 2016, I suppose.
Kyle
that was a
Schwarber
much longer time. But so maybe it's guys named Kyle, but they're at the same time. I hesitate, and again, this goes back to me saying I felt like the Reds were playing like a team that wanted it more, which sounds like a really meatball thing to say. But I also look at like when you just personality wise, when you see, and part of this is just right. It's the way they go about their business. I'm not saying that Kyle Tucker doesn't want it. I don't want to even insinuate that, but Schwarber and the World Series and all that was a very different animal from those things. And we just kind of put together all this stuff about like, well, can he or can't he? Is he fine? Is he now he's got to go see his own guy and leave the team? And I just don't know if there's that same drive there.
Like DeAndre Dawson having liquid drain from your knees after every game, or Bill Buckner having ankles wrapped because they were basically broken in half. Yeah, that kind of.
And I get it. He's playing for what I would assume at this point is going to be a much lower contract than what he would have been expecting coming into this season, and in maybe June or July. But
actually, he's not playing for that, right?
Yeah, yeah. In point of fact, he is not playing for, and maybe that is why. But it's such a tough situation to watch, and that they made this big swing after the whole debacle about the hand and not going on the IL when that got really bad in his performance. Then he bounced back. He had been doing so well, and it created a ton of optimism around, man, if this guy continues to hit like this, that's the kind of thing you need, right? One man wrecking crew. He could go in there and carry him, and
he does have every incentive to want to get back and play well to show that in fact he is the player that he demonstrated in April and May and June, right? Because right now, to your original point about his lower contract, yeah, he is looking probably at less money than he would have because the lingering questions about having being injured 2 years in a row and his numbers going down. I mean, that's a reality that other teams are going to look at when they're investing in these ridiculous 9-10-year deals or whatever you have to give somebody now. But not to say that you wouldn't do it for the short-term game, but I think teams are like, well, if we're going to give you one of these huge long contracts, we at least got to get something out of you the first 4 years, right? And if you're going to be hurt a lot, then that's, problematic.
Well, and you're going into, you're going to have a work stoppage after next season.
Right.
So,
right.
Most
likely.
It's an extra factor in his eligible places to go and who's going to.
Yeah, there's a lot of teams that are going to be just not even entertaining those deals until the CBA gets resolved. I know there's some that we know are never going to do that, period. But there are others, I look at a team like I would think maybe the Texas Rangers. They've already invested so much money in a bunch of guys. They're not going that Dodgers route. Do the Dodgers do it? Defer a bunch of money and do some of those things. But I think, if you look at and here's the other thing is with this short playoff, unless he can really get back and let's say whatever the Cubs do, if it's 2 or 3 games and they're out in the first round,
you don't get 2 games to get your swing back. Right.
Yeah, even if unless he goes out and hits 6 home runs over that series, he's not going to do enough to earn him that money back. Now, if they can make a run and make it to the NLCS, make it to the World Series, and he powers that run, it's kind of like Carlos Beltran when he had just those tremendous postseason performances and basically put himself on the map even further. If you can do something like that, I think he can make back most or at least a good chunk of that money that he's presumably lost. But
I feel like 3 home runs at Wrigleyville North would help, right? in the second round.
Certainly.
Against Milwaukee.
Especially with them being without Brandon Woodruff. So you talk about a pitching staff that does not look nearly as daunting as what it would have a month ago.
Yeah, even. That's right.
Evan, I do want your thoughts on a potential playoff roster. Which of these guys do you see playing in the playoffs? Is Owen Casey going to make an appearance? Do we see Ballesteros still here? Alcantara? Any of these guys still on the team here in the postseason?
I think, again, a lot of that's going to depend on whether Tucker's around. I think if he's healthy and able to go, I think you can say no to Casey and Alcantara. But the fact that
Ballesteros have to drop a player, right? They're going to have to drop 2 players from the current roster, probably 1 pitcher and 1 hitter.
I think Ballesteros, I mean, they've been batting him in a cleanup spot at DH.
Yeah, I would
Right?
be I'd be extremely disappointed if the Cubs pulled and this is like a Dusty Baker, Lou Piniella move. If they kept Santana and left Moises Ballesteros off, I want the guy who can hit on the playoff roster, even if he's young. I remember a young third baseman for the Miami Marlins back in 2003 who had just come up recently and was an absolute monster and then had like a near Hall of Fame career. I would like that to be the case for the Cubs. At least, I mean, you know what you get with Santana. Bring up the young guy who's actually hitting, like somebody who's actually hitting today, because nobody else is, right?
Yeah, well, I would just as soon see them leave Willie Castro off and find a way to DFA somebody, or maybe there's a 60-day IL, and bring Billy Hamilton in to be a defensive replacement and a pinch runner. We've seen them do the speed thing plenty of times, but like Castro's versatility is great. That's really only valuable over the regular season when you have to kind of spot guys here and there. He doesn't do anything well enough to merit a spot.
So correct me, I forget how this works, but if you have a player in a playoff series who gets hurt and can't play, can you designate him for the rest of the series as out and replace him with someone? Isn't that true?
You can do the injury.
So let's say Nico Horner, heaven forbid, does something bad to his ankle, and they're like, he's out for the rest of the 3-game series, the 5-game, whatever round you're in. They could bring Castro in then, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that to me, that's the only reason. Like,
not like you're going to give Dansby a day off on Game 4 of the NLCS, right?
Right, and Castro is fine at a number of positions, but he doesn't excel at any. Like, we've already seen Matt Shaw's play at third base bumped him off of that, right? So he's really only been an outfield replacement. Well, again, even if Tucker's not healthy and you can play Suzuki out there. And Castro doesn't hit well enough to merit a spot in that regard. He's not fast enough to really be a pinch runner type. I think that playoff roster, that's what I want to see, those guys who you may have 1 or 2 skills, but you do them so well that it's worth having that small advantage. And that's the only thing I could see Santana standing for, is to say defense at first, but is he that much better than Bush that he merits a spot at all? He can't run, can't hit. Yeah. So. Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about a narrow sliver of one inning over a couple games. I think the Cubs will keep Castro because I think they are probably worried about an in-game injury and just not having a backup middle infielder. But what I think they could do, especially in a 3-game series, you don't need like 19 pitchers in a 3-game series. Sorry, you just don't. So I feel that's where you can really make some. I mean, let's hypothetically say your rotation is going to be Horton, Boyd, and Imanaga, right? And maybe you keep Carlos Ray as a long man. Do you also keep Assad as a long man? Okay, let's say you do, or Tyon. You don't need them all in a 3-game series. You just don't. So maybe one of those guys is off the roster then because you're going to use them in the next series anyway. Who's going to pitch game if one of the next series, right? Maybe not one of those 3 if they play those 3 games in a row. So you're probably going to need another guy later, and then with the rest of the bullpen, they've got. I mean, is Porter Hodge a necessary requirement for? If they bring Porter Hodge into a 3-game series, it's because they're already down by 4 more runs, and at that point, I don't know, let Rizzo pitch. I don't whatever. I don't want to limit the bats they can bring in off the bench. I want to buy Ballesteros there. I'd even take a Ballesteros and a Casey, frankly, just because I'm so concerned about the offense. Now, part of this is relying on whether or not Tucker is back or not, right? If he's not there, then they have to keep both of those guys, I think, on the active roster. But I think the place you trim in a 3-game series is your 19-man bullpen and your 5 or 6 starters. I mean, come on, be realistic.
Yeah, I don't worry about a Padres threat of throwing a bunch of lefties at this Cubs lineup here. So we'll break that down a little bit more next week. But
if we even play the Padres, it could be the Dodgers. Ugh.
No,
would that be tough?
Let's hope not. Yeah. Looking at the current standings while we're here, the Cubs 3 games over the Padres, who are 3 games behind the Dodgers currently. And the Cincinnati Reds and New York Mets are tied for the final wild card spot. Arizona lurking 1 game back behind both Cincinnati and New York. We play the Mets next week. Our final look at the week ahead, the week that will be. Let's pull up the Cubs schedule here. We'll do our final predictions. This is it for the season, the final week of the regular season, if you can believe it. Homestand 3 against the Mets, who are going to be fighting for their playoff spot, and then 3 against the Cardinals. Who would have thought that these games could be completely meaningless? The 3 Cardinals games here at the end of the season. We'll start with you, Pat. Let's start with you. 6-game final homestand of the season.
I mean, I don't think the Cardinals care anymore. Didn't they all say goodbye at Busch Stadium the other day? Like
they did.
Like Arenado and the Russian pitcher who's terrible now. What's his name? What's his name?
Miles Michaelis.
Michaelis. Yeah, he's been so irrelevant for so many years. I forgot.
So irrelevant.
I just know he exists. No, everybody said goodbye. They had a terrible year. They're going nowhere. I don't even think they're going to have anybody come here from their town, other than to escape, I suppose, for the weekend. But I think the Cubs will probably end up. It's hard to say because if the Cubs can clinch ahead of time, then they probably won't try. So I imagine they'll use the big 3 pitchers in the first 3 games, and then the next 3 games they'll use whoever. I will say, interestingly, there is a slim possibility the Cubs could play the Mets in the first round of the playoffs. So if you use Horton and Boyd and Imanaga against the Mets on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they will then be pitching against those same Mets the following Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Does that concern you at all? A little bit, maybe.
It seems like a stretch. There's a lot.
It does. I know. I'm just saying. Anyway, so long and short, I'm going to say 3-3.
3-3. Evan,
which is like a punt.
Yeah, but I was, even before you said that, I was kind of going in that same direction, right? The way this team has kind of struggled, I see them, they probably sneak one out there again. I could see them going 1-2 against the Mets, 2-1 against the Cards, something like that. It just kind of, again, as much as I would love to say, man, they're going to go 5-1 and really catch that spark, it feels like, they're limping along with the rock in their shoe. And they're just going to continue doing so over these next 6 games. And we're just going to have to hope that they figure something out between game 162 and the start of the postseason, because I feel like we're just going to have a really blah week of baseball.
I agree. 3-3 for me, as well, as the Cubs are 5-5 in their last 10, and they've been feeling like 500. That's
June.
been the vibes. Yeah, so I think that's just going to keep rolling, and they'll close it out the way that the way we've been feeling this team, and that's 500. So 3-3 for the final week of the season. Man, I can't believe it. Another season in the books already. Looking forward to, at least we get to have playoff podcasts. So We'll be back next week, and we're going to be doing a playoff preview. And then we'll be back probably later in the week to do a playoff recap and to preview the next series. It's been so long since we've. I don't count 2020.
Those days?
2020 does not count as a playoff year.
It's a 2-day. Yeah.
Stop saying, it's the first time since 2020. No, that does not count. So you got to go way back, like 2018 here, since they had a shot. So.
Even 2018 really didn't count, because that was like the play-in game, that was, you talk about them just collapsing down the stretch. That 2018 season, that team was just nosediving and just absolutely face planted there at the end after all those. Even the 17 run was like, you guys remember that Nats series and how gross the weather was? And they had to bang the one game, and you could tell they had just done everything they possibly could just to make it past the Nats. And it was like, the Dodgers are going to spank you now. So, I mean, playoff baseball has not been fun for the Cubs, at least from my perspective. since 16, like 15 and 16 were
15 and 16. That's
incredibly fun. And ever since then, it's just been beating you over the head with disappointment or frustration of some sort. And so I'm still pissed at Michael A. Taylor for hitting that grand slam in that Steven Strasburg mold game. That was the whole, and Dusty being weird. So anyway, you got to go back a long time before it's been fun.
Although Game 5, when Wade struck out Bryce Harper to win the game, that was a fun moment.
It was awesome. That was awesome. But at the same time, it felt like, yep, that's it for the.
Kind of.
What a year!
They had to burn everybody up.
I guess we got one last Arrieta start against the Dodgers, but we knew it was his last start as a Cub, basically, right? And he won, but that was it. Yeah.
And that's the last playoff win they've had.
Yeah.
It's only 8 years. It's no big deal.
And we will close.
Retool, not rebuild.
Retool. We will close the show as we do all season long with our Cubs player profile. And this week, we are going to do Alec Mills, Pat. Tell us about Alec Mills.
I will, but I'm going to do something a little bit unusual. I'm going to do I'm going to have an opening act, which will only take about 60 seconds, not even. The opening act is this. I did some research. I went down a rabbit hole this week, and I thought you might find this interesting. Speaking of the Alec Millses of the world. So right now, we have Matthew Boyd has a WAR of 2.4, which may go down after next start. Who knows? We'll see how things are going. Do you remember 2022 when the Cubs were terrible? Yes. 74 win team. Yeah. So there was a pitcher on that team named Adrian Sampson. Do you remember him?
I do.
He started 19 games, pitched 104 innings. Do you know that he had a WAR of 2.3? His season in 2022 would be just by a hair the second best. He'd be the second best starter in the Cubs rotation right now. Better than Cade Horton by WAR, right? Better than everybody. Better than Imanaga. Better than everybody else. After that year, the Cubs traded him to Tampa. Long story short, he never pitched another inning in the majors. Never got hurt. Just never pitched again. He's one of the few players who probably involuntarily played his last Major League Baseball season with a WAR of 2.3 and an ERA under 3 and never played again. And that brings me to Alec Mills.
I should use him in my immaculate grid every now and then.
You should, yeah. So Alec Mills was born on November 30th, 1991. Boy, he's a kid. Anyway, he was born in Clarksville, Tennessee. He was a walk-on at the University of Tennessee at Martin. And you may say, oh, is that one of those little schools that's like a baseball powerhouse? Nope. He's the only major league player to ever come out of the University of Tennessee at Martin. We just talked about our friend Simon the other day, Randall Simon, and from his home island, there are like 20 major league baseball players, 5 of whom are probably Hall of Famers. So yeah, this was not a notorious baseball powerhouse, Tennessee Martin. But he did manage to get drafted in 2012 by the Kansas City Royals in the 22nd round. You probably remember the 2012 amateur draft because it's widely remembered today among baseball people as the Albert Almora draft. The best player the Cubs drafted in that draft, the only one that had like a decent career with a positive WAR was David Bodie at 18th round. But the Cubs did pass on Alec Mills 21 times, and he eventually worked his way through the minors with the Royals, made his major league debut in 2016, pitched 3.1 innings, gave up 5 earned runs, and was released. But they did one of those things where they ended up trading him to the Cubs, post. He was going to be released, I guess, but he was designated for assignment, and they cut a deal with the Cubs. Do you remember that fateful day on February 8th of 2017 when the Cubs acquired Alec Mills? Do you remember who they gave up for him? It was their second-round draft pick from 2015. A lot of people were up in arms about this one. They're like, how can we give up? Now, remember, this is February of 17. So this is a guy they had for a year and a half. And people are like, how can we give him up? He's on my prospect list. He's number 11 on my prospect list or whatever, like that kind of thing. Donnie DeWeese. Remember him? Second
people
baseman,
were
maybe.
Up in arms. Yep.
Yeah, people are. I don't know about that. We're getting this nobody, and we're giving up our second round pick from. I think the Cubs had decided that Donnie DeWeese was not going to be a major league player, and they figured it out. He never actually did play in the majors, so I guess they were right. So the Cubs acquired Mills. He spent the 2017 year learning the Cubs way in the minors, and then made his debut in 2018, replacing an injured Tyler Chatwood. Oh God, 2018 was such a terrible year. He pitched 7 games, started 2 of them, had an ERA of 4, a 0.2 WAR, but very limited action. The following year in 2019, he played 9 games, started 4 of them, the 2.75 ERA, and a WAR of 1.0 in 36 innings. That's not bad. It wasn't until 2020 when he really kind of like hit his stride. That was the COVID year that we just discussed, where the Cubs lost the 2 playoff games to Miami.
They had 11 playoff games.
Yeah, that's right. He had 11. He had 11 starts that year. He had a 4.48 ERA. His WAR was 0.2. And the only reason he started that year was because he was an injury replacement for one Jose Quintana, who became injured that year. But remember, 11 starts in the COVID year was like starting the whole year, basically, right? I mean, there were only 50-some games, right, the whole year, right? So, or 60 games, right? So, I mean, he pitched almost a whole season. Despite his 4.48 ERA and his WAR of 0.2, he did have 2 notable days. Do you remember the May 16th of 2020? What happened?
I don't.
Alec and his wife Paige had their first child. It was a son.
Oh, that's probably why.
There you go. And then later that year, on September 13th of 2020, he had his 15th career start. And he earned NL Player of the Week honors. And in part, I think that had something to do with the fact that he only pitched 1 game that week. He did throw a no-hitter against the Milwaukee Brewers. And Adrian Hauser, a name that keeps popping back up. The Cubs won the game 12-0. Alec Mills threw 9 innings, gave up obviously no hits and no runs.
In Milwaukee.
Had 3 walks, 5 strikeouts on 114 pitches. As my dad pointed out the other day, we watched it in my den. I don't remember the occasion, but it was September, so it's birthday season, my family. That was a game where a couple fun facts, that no-hitter. Now, remember, this is a one-pitcher no-hitter, not like the no-hitters the Cubs have been getting as of late, where multiple people take part. David Russ became a rare club of manager catchers of no-hitters. He was a catcher of one of Jake Arrieta's no-hitters, the last one he had against the Reds. That was a great game. I watched that at Murphy's Bleachers. And then he was also the manager of this game. I think at the time that happened, there were 3 of them. Actually, it happens quite a bit because there were like 3 actual managers that year who had both caught and managed. A lot of catchers become managers, apparently, and they catch no-hitters, too. It was also only the 4th time the Brewers were ever no-hit, which is actually pretty impressive. Only 4 times in team history. And Mills' previous longest start of his career before that no-hitter, 7 innings. So wow. He stretched. And it was the last no-hitter thrown in Major League Baseball on September 13th since Dazzy Vance did it in 1925. And in fact, it was only the 3rd ever. The first was in the 19th century, so I don't even know if that counts. Another fun fact, Alec Mills' fastball that day, average fastball, 90.1 miles an hour. The 16th lowest of all 122 no-hitters thrown as of that date. And I guarantee you that will be the lowest of any future no-hitter thrown.
Yeah, pretty much.
I have to imagine that of the 16 no-hitters, a couple of those might have been like a Negro or a Wakefield or somebody. But Carl Hubble with an eephus pitch. I don't know. I can't imagine fastballs below that at this point. He also only had 5 swing and misses the entire game. The fewest since 1988 of any no-hitter. And then finally, he had 26 called strikes, which was the most by a Cub that season. So he had pinpoint accuracy that day. He went on in 2021 fresh off that season, to pitch. Then I remember 2021 was the first year of the full retool, or I guess of the retool, right? The half retool. He ended up starting 20 games that year, had a 5.07 ERA and a WAR of -0.4. And then the next year, he started a couple games, had a 9.68 ERA, injured his back, a -0.7 WAR. And then as an injured player who wasn't doing well, of course, he went to the Reds the next year, and that was his last season in the majors. So I would say that the no-hitter is probably his on-field highlight of his career,
Sure.
if I guess. He also had those funny glasses. Remember the thick glasses that you don't have to have anymore because you can do the thinner frames now. But he still liked his. And that is the Alec Mills story.
Always fun to remember Cubs no hitters. And
that was an unexpected one, but a fun one. Yeah,
Definitely
and at Milwaukee, I mean, come on, that was awesome. Yeah,
that's right. And with that, I think we're gonna wrap it up and call it a podcast. Evan, remind our listeners where they can find your work on the internet, and you have just completed your 30th appearance here on this podcast. So congratulations, second place all time on our list of guest appearances. And
your 30th appearance jacket should be showing up in the mail.
Gold jacket,
of course,
green jacket, who gives a shit?
Of course, first in Pat's dad's heart, Jim Nagel celebrating his 80th birthday. Yesterday, happy birthday to him.
Yeah.
And
we watched the Bears beat Dallas together. Talk about a great birthday present.
And definitely you're his favorite guest, Evan. So please remind everyone where they can find your work.
Absolutely. And if you really want to go to the throwback, you can find us all over the place. But if you go to our YouTube channel, Cubs Insider, and you search for old episodes of our Rant podcast, which is still active, but you will find Alec Mills and the debut of his baby boy, who was born in apparently May of 2020 on that podcast. This was prior to that. And the one thing I'll point out about Mills is I've never in my life seen another pitcher who landed more closed with his front foot. You know, most guys have the toe toward the plate, and his foot was turned in. If you look at pictures of it, it's almost alarming. It's very off-putting in a way, but very cool stuff.
He was like one of those Circus Soleil guys, you know.
It's really funky. But he's also thrown more hitters at American Family Field and Miller Park than the Brewers have. So so there you go. But CubsInsider.com. You can find me on X at @DEvanAltman, or you can search Real Cubs Insider. Search for us on Facebook. Check us out on YouTube. We're all over the place.
And of course, you can find us on YouTube as well if you search for Wrigleyville Nation Podcast. That's where you can get the video version of this podcast. Even if you don't consume your podcast through the video form, please go there, throw us a like, subscribe. Helps us work the algorithm so other Cub fans can find us. Really important, easy way to support the show, as we're going to be looking to attract more folks for our playoff coverage. So make sure you help us support the show that way. You can follow us on all the social media platforms at Wrigleyville Nat. And of course, the Patreon, patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation. It's how we stay ad-free for another season because of our generous patrons over at patreon.com/Wrigleyville Nation. If you can't support the show financially in these times, we understand. Just tell your Cub fan friends about the show. Spread the word for us. And if you do want to support the show, you want to buy a little something Christmas right around the corner, if you can believe it. Go to the store. We have a store link on our website, WrigleyvilleNation.com, or pinned to the top of any of our social media accounts. You can find the link to the store. Get yourself a shirt, a hat, a mug, all kinds of fun stuff.
It's great Halloween gift. Also, It's great for Thanksgiving. If you want to give thanks to somebody, buy them a Cubs Wrigleyville Nation item.
Absolutely. So we appreciate all of the fans who have listened to us all season long, as we will come back to wrap up the regular season. Next week, we will preview the playoffs, and you need to stay subscribed because playoff coverage, we could be dropping episodes twice a week at any time. So you need to make sure you're ready.
After sweeping the Brewers, we might have to have an extended episode.
And with that, we're going to wrap it up and call it a podcast. Pat, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thanks again, everyone, for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.